One warning. That's all it took to send shockwaves across the Middle East. Because Iran has just delivered a message that could completely change how the next war is fought. Not by threatening Washington, not by threatening New York, but by warning that America's closest partners in the Gulf could become the first targets if the United States launches another attack on Iranian territory. At first, that makes no sense. If America pulls the trigger, why would Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or the United Arab Emirates be the ones forced to pay the price? That isn't just a political question, it's a military strategy. And if that strategy unfolds, it won't remain a regional crisis. It could disrupt global oil supplies, shake financial markets, pull multiple countries into a conflict they never planned to fight, and trigger consequences that reach far beyond the Middle East. But here's where the story becomes even more disturbing. This isn't a threat that appeared overnight. The groundwork for this moment has been building for years, quietly, strategically, and largely out of the public eye. Which raises an even bigger question. Has Iran already prepared for a war that much of the world still believes can be avoided? And if the answer is yes, then the countries most at risk may not be the ones dominating today's headlines. So what exactly changed? Why are Gulf states suddenly being mentioned alongside a potential US-Iran confrontation? And what critical piece of this story is almost everyone overlooking? To answer those questions, we have to go back to the chain of events that pushed the region to this dangerous point. To understand Iran's warning, we first need to look at what reignited this crisis. In recent weeks, tensions between Washington and Tehran have climbed once again. American officials have repeatedly signaled that military action remains an option if Iran crosses certain red lines. At the same time, Iran has accused the United States of increasing pressure through both military deployments and political threats. Then came the message that caught the world's attention. Iran reportedly warned that if American attacks on its territory resume, countries hosting or supporting U.S. military operations in the Gulf could also face consequences. That instantly changed the conversation, because this was no longer just about two longtime rivals. It suddenly raised the possibility that a conflict between the United States and Iran could spread across the entire Gulf region. But here's the question that few people are asking. Why would Iran risk opening new fronts against countries that aren't officially at war with it? That decision would seem incredibly dangerous, unless Iran believes those countries are already part of the battlefield. And that's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Across the Gulf, the United States maintains a network of military bases, airfields, logistics hubs, and naval facilities. These locations are essential for projecting American power across the Middle East. From Iran's perspective, those installations aren't just foreign bases, they're potential launch points. And if Tehran believes future attacks could originate from them, its military calculations change dramatically. But military bases are only part of the equation. There's another reason these Gulf nations matter far more than most people realize. A reason tied to oil, global trade, and a narrow stretch of water through which a significant share of the world's energy supplies pass every single day. If that lifeline is threatened, the effects won't stop in the Middle East. They could be felt in fuel prices, supply chains, stock markets, and economies across the globe. So why is that waterway so important? And why has it become one of the most strategically valuable places on Earth? That's where the real story begins. For decades, many people believed that the next US-Iran conflict would be fought with fighter jets, missiles, and warships. But Iran's latest warning suggests something very different. The real battlefield may not be a city. It may not even be a military base. It may be the world's energy supply itself. At the center of this strategy lies one of the most important waterways on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow passage connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. But despite its size, an enormous share of globally traded oil passes through it every day. That means what happens in this single stretch of water doesn't just affect the Middle East. It affects the entire world. If shipping through the strait is disrupted, even for a short period, energy markets can react almost instantly. Oil prices can spike, shipping costs can rise, and governments thousands of miles away suddenly find themselves dealing with the consequences. Now the earlier warning starts to make more sense. If Gulf states become involved in a conflict, the risk isn't limited to military targets. The region's energy infrastructure, ports, and shipping lanes could all become part of a much larger strategic calculation. And that's exactly what worries military planners. Because modern wars aren't always won by controlling territory. Sometimes they're fought by controlling pressure, economic pressure, political pressure, global pressure. But here's the twist almost nobody is talking about. What if Iran's warning isn't primarily about launching an attack? What if it's meant to change America's decision before a single missile is fired? Think about it. If Washington knows that any future strike could trigger a regional crisis affecting allies, oil markets, and the global economy, then every military decision suddenly becomes far more complicated. In other words, the warning itself may already be part of the strategy, but there's one final piece of this puzzle that connects everything we've discussed. A piece that explains why every major power, not just the United States and Iran, is watching this crisis so closely. And once you understand that final connection, you'll see why this confrontation is about much more than two countries. At first glance, Iran's warning sounds like the opening line of another Middle East crisis. But look closer, and a different picture begins to emerge. This isn't simply about retaliation, it's about deterrence. By warning that any renewed American attack could put Gulf states at risk, Iran is attempting to raise the cost of military action before it even begins. The message isn't aimed only at Washington. It's aimed at every government that could provide military support, every country that hosts American forces, and every leader who now has to ask a difficult question. Is this a conflict we can afford to be drawn into? That's the hidden strategy behind the warning. Not necessarily to start a wider war, but to make one appear so costly that it becomes harder to justify. And that's why countries across the Gulf are pushing for diplomacy, because they understand something that often gets lost in the headlines. In modern geopolitics, the greatest victories aren't always won on the battlefield. Sometimes they're won by convincing your opponent that the price of fighting is simply too high. Does that mean war is inevitable? No. Diplomatic channels remain open, and situations like this can change rapidly. Public statements, military movements, and negotiations often evolve from day to day. But one fact is becoming increasingly clear. The next chapter of the US-Iran rivalry won't be defined only by missiles or military power. It will be shaped by strategy, by alliances, by economics, and by the decisions made long before the first shot is ever fired. Because in today's world, the most dangerous weapon isn't always the one that's launched. Sometimes it's the warning that forces everyone else to rethink their next move.